Hello everyone, welcome to this exciting lecture series on electrochemistry. Today we are diving into one of the most important breakthroughs in the physical chemistry, that is the modern theory of strong electrolytes. So here is the deal. Older theories worked fine for the weak electrolytes, but they could not explain why strong electrolytes such as HCl or NaCl behave weirdly at higher concentrations. That is where the Debye-Hickel and Onsgaard stepped in. Let us explore the modern theory of strong electrolytes, which was developed in the early 20th century. In 1923, Debye and Huckel introduced their groundbreaking theory, and later in the 1926, Onsager expanded it to give a modern and more complete explanation. Unlike the earlier theories, this modern theory or approach takes into account the electrostatic forces that exist between ions in the solution, which earlier models had ignored. The Debye-Heckel theory explains how strong electrolytes, which completely dissociate into the ions, still don't follow their ideal behavior. This is due to the interaction between the charged ions. It introduced the concept of an ionic atmosphere, which means that uh, any given ion is surrounded by a cloud of oppositely charged ions. This affects how freely it can move and interact. So there are two main concept ions in the solution and their mobility or the behavior in the ions, which is the ionic atmosphere. The electrostatic interaction influences the mobility of the ions. That is how easily they can move through the solution, and this in turn impacts the overall conductivity of the electrolyte. The theory also explains how ion concentrations play a major role. As concentration increases, the interaction becomes stronger, and conductivity does not increase as much as we have expected. Now, let us go over the main assumptions of the Debye-Hickel theory, which help us understand how it models a strong electrolyte. First, the theory assumes that the solute or electrolyte is completely dissociated in the solution. That means it is only applicable to strong electrolyte which fully break up into the ions when dissolved. It is not applicable to partial dissociation like in the weak electrolytes. Second, it assumes that ions are spherical in shape, which is a simplification to make calculations easier. Also, solvation of ions is ignored. So the theory does not take into account how water molecules or solvent particles surround and interact with the ions. In reality, solvation can impact ion behavior, but this theory leaves that out. Thirdly, and very importantly, the solvent plays no direct role in this theory. It is only seen as a passive medium that allows ions to interact and move around. So while the solvent's dielectric constant may influence the interactions, it does not participate chemically or structurally. Finally, the theory makes a statistical assumption that the individual lines that surround a central line are not looked at one by one. Instead, they are represented as an average cloud of continuous charge density. This ionic atmosphere helps describe how a central line feels the net effect of surrounding ions and not their individual positions. These simplifications helped Debye and Haeckel build a model that could still explain the behavior of strong electrolytes with surprising accuracy, especially how conductivity drops with increasing concentration, which earlier theories could not explain. Let us now talk about one of the key ideas in the Debye-Hickel theory, which is the concept of ionic atmosphere. Imagine a center line floating in a solution. Around it, there forms a kind of spherical haze made up of other ions. This has or the charge has a net charge that is equal in magnitude but opposite in sign to that of the central ion. This surrounding cloud is basically called ionic atmosphere. Because of these opposite charges, the center line interacts electrostatically with the ionic atmosphere. This interaction has an important effect. That is, it actually lowers the energy and chemical potential of the center line. So you can think of the ionic atmosphere as a kind of cushion that stabilizes the ion and reduces its free energy. According to Debye model, at very low concentrations, where ions are far apart and behave more ideally, we can quantitatively calculate the activity coefficient of an ion using what is called the Debye limiting law. This tells us how much the behavior of an ion deviates from ideal behavior due to these ionic interactions. So the ionic atmosphere is a key part of understanding why ion activity, not just the concentration, matters in real solutions, especially when dealing with the strong electrolytes. Here we can see visually the ionic atmosphere. If there is one charge, for example positive charge, it will be surrounded by some oppositely charged, for example negative charge. We can see there that the number of charges will be equal, but they are opposite in their sign. Negative charge is surrounded by the positive charge, and the positive charge is being surrounded by the negative charge. So this is basically the ionic atmosphere. Let us now go over with the main ideas of the double Hickel theory, which help us understand the behavior of strong electrolytes in the solution. First one is the complete ionization or uh, almost complete ionization. The theory explains that a strong electrolyte is completely ionized at all dilutions. That means when it dissolves in water, it breaks apart fully into the ions. No neutral ions molecules remain. However, modern studies have shown that this is not entirely true. There is usually a very small amount of unionized substances still present, even in the strong electrolytes. So instead of saying completely ionized, a better way to describe it would be almost completely ionized. This correction reflects a more accurate picture based on the experimental evidence. Second one is the non-uniform ionic distribution. The theory also highlights that the ions in the solution are not randomly scattered. Because oppositely charged ions attract, there is a natural tendency for cations to be surrounded by anions and for the anions to be surrounded by the cations. This means the distribution of ions is not uniform in the solution. Instead, we see a kind of organized clustering where positive and negative ions tend to be near each other. This behavior plays a crucial role in creating the ionic atmosphere that we have just discussed in the previous slide. And it affects the things like the mobility and activity of ions in the solution. These 2 points set the foundation for understanding how electrostatic interactions affect the properties of the electrolytic solutions. And they explain why conductivity does not always behave the way as it should, based on the just the concentration. Continuing with the main ideas of the double theory, here are a few more important points that help to explain the behavior of strong electrolyte in the solution. Third one is the decrease in the conductance with the concentration. As the concentration of an electrolyte increases, we observe a decrease in its equivalent conductance. So why does this happen? It is due to a fall in the mobility of the ions. Basically, the ions cannot move as freely when they are crowded together as they are when they are not crowded together. This crowding causes stronger interionic effects or electrostatic interaction between neighboring ions, which actually slows them down. And the reverse is also true. At lower concentrations, ions are more spread out and face less interaction, so eventually their conductance, the conductance of the solution will increase. Fourth one is the degree of dissociation and the conductance ratio. Traditionally, for weak electrolytes, we can find the degree of dissociation, which is the lambda V over lambda infinity. Lambda V is the molar conductivity at a given concentration, and the lambda infinity is the molar conductivity at infinite dilution. But for the strong electrolytes, the same ratio does not give us uh, the true value of the degree of dissociation because strong electrolytes are almost fully dissociated. They are not 100% dissociated, but they are almost fully dissociated. Instead, this ratio gives us something called the conductance coefficient, which relates more to how well the ions conduct electricity at a particular concentration, not just how they are dissociated. Okay. So the question is why lambda W, lambda V is less than lambda infinity. Even though strong electrolytes are almost completely ionized, the value of lambda V, which is the molar conductivity at a normal concentration, is still very much less than the lambda infinity, which is the molar conductivity at infinite dilutions. That is because, again, in a more concentrated solution, ions interact more and this hinders their mobility. So even with full ionization, the increased electrostatic static effects cause a noticeable drop in the overall conductivity, which is again basically due to the ionic atmosphere. Now, let us talk about the Debye-Hickel and Onsager conductance equation. This equation was a major step forward because it takes into account the key factors that affect the conductance of the strong electrolyte in the solution, especially the intra-ionic interactions and the influence of the ionic atmosphere. For a univalent electrolyte, that is, an electrolyte with a single positive and negative charges, and one that is assumed to be completely dissociated, the conductance equation is written in a specific mathematical form. The equation is given as this: lambda V is equal to lambda infinity minus which is multiplied with the a plus b lambda infinity and the concentration term, which is in the under root form. We have seen that the lambda V is the conductance at a specific concentration and the lambda infinity is the conductance at infinite dilution. In this equation, we see two important constants A and B and a concentration term C. This concentration term C is measured in the gram equivalent per liter. Now here is the important part. The constant A and B are not just the random parameters. They depend only on the nature of the solvent like water or alcohol and on the temperature of the solvent. So if you change the solvent or adjust the temperature, the values of A and B will be changed accordingly. Here are the values equations for the A and B. Okay, we can see that A is equal to 82.4 divided by dt, which is in the under root form, multiplied by eta, and B is also equal to 8.20 multiplied by 10 to the power 5, which is and it is divided by dt under root 3 by 2. Here d and eta are the dielectric constants and the coefficient of viscosity of the medium respectively. Eta is the coefficient of viscosity of the medium and d is the dielectric constant. So in this equation we can see that A depends only on the two factors, which is basically temperature and the solvent, and B also depends on the temperature and the sum of the properties of the solvent. These values are obtained at an absolute temperature, which is in the Kelvin scale. The constant A is actually a measure of the electrophoretic effect, while B is that of the asymmetric effect. For water, for example, D will be equal to 78.5 and eta will be equal to 8.95 multiplied by 10 to the power minus 3, and the value of A comes out to be 60.20, and that of B we can also calculate. These equations help us understand how and why the equivalent conductance of an electrolyte decreases with increasing concentration, and it provides a much more accurate picture than the older models. Now, let us move on to the concept of activity in the solution. The activity of a solution is basically a measure of the effective concentration of an anion or an electrolyte. It is not just how much it is present, but how much is actually active in terms of chemical behavior. It is denoted by the symbol A. Mathematically, it can be defined as A is equal to C multiplied by F. Here, C is the actual concentration of the solution, which is made in the molarity, and F is the activity coefficient. Now, when we are dealing with very dilute solutions, the ions that don't interfere with each other in the very dilution. So in this case, the activity coefficient F will be nearly equal to 1. That means in such cases, the activity becomes equal to the actual concentration. But in more concentrated solutions, the value of F, which is the activity coefficient, um, drops below 1 due to the interaction below the of the ions. So the activity is less than the concentration of the ions. We can also rearrange the equations to get F is equal to A divided by C. So the activity coefficient is defined as the ratio of the activity to the actual concentration of the solution. Okay, the ratio of activity to the actual concentration of the solution will be the activity coefficient. This concept is super important when we deal with the real world solutions that are not ideally dilute, like in industrial or biological systems, where the effective behavior of ion can be very different from what their concentrations suggest. Now let us move further and talk about the activity and activity coefficient of the electrolyte. For an electrolyte, the overall activity is not just a single value. It is actually the product of individual activities of its cations and anions. So we can write that A is equal to A plus multiplied by A minus. Here A plus is the activity of cation and A minus is the activity of anions. It means that the total activity depends on how active both type of ions are in the solution. Similarly, the activity coefficient of the entire electrolyte, which tells us how closely the solutions behave to ideal, is given by the product of the activity coefficient of the cations and the anions. F will be equal to F plus multiplied by F minus, where F plus is the activity coefficient of the cation and F minus is the activity coefficient of the anions. These relationships help us understand the real behavior of ions in a solution, especially when interaction between ions start to matter, like in concentrated solutions or when working with the strong electrolytes. Now, here is something important. The individual activity and activity coefficient of ions in an electrolyte cannot be measured directly through some of the experiment. This is because we cannot isolate a single ion to measure its behavior independently. So ions are always exist in the pairs or groups to maintain the electrical neutrality. However, what we can measure is their mean value, and that is extremely useful in the practice. The mean value of the electrolyte, which can be shown by the AX or BY, can be determined by the following relation. So if we assume that stoichiometrically this is the equation AXBY, they ionize in the solution giving these ions, then we can find the mean value by this equation. A positive or negative ion activity can be found by the V under root A plus X dot A minus Y. Here we can see that X and Y are basically the exponents, are the coefficient for the stoichiometric values, and V is the total number of ions present in the solution, which appears in this equation. So finally, that is the end of our discussion. I hope you have learned something new and benefited from this lecture. Thank you very much.